The other day I was out here clearing out around the yard. We've been planting for years and years and years and years, all kinds of things, all kinds of places. Now that we've moved in full time, I'm looking around and going, geez, some of this stuff is awful thick. You know, we've succeeded too well. And so I've been taking out things, and one of the things that's been coming out is coffee plants in the wrong place. As I got in here to take this coffee plant out, I took a look inside, and what did I find? I found a huge old vanilla orchid that goes way back. I don't know when I planted this. I forgot it. It was inside the tree. I started pruning the coffee, and I went, oh my goodness, look at that. There's not only is there a vanilla orchid in here, but right here, this little fixture, that's a flower stalk, and there's 3 others in here, which means this year the orchid was blooming like crazy. We never even saw it. The flowers were lost in the tree. What I did about it was I cut the whole coffee tree back. I hung the orchid nicely into it. A little bit of it's going onto the chirimoya over here. And then I'm girdling the bottom of the coffee tree. It's going to become a stick to hold up a vanilla orchid. We don't have too many orchids around here, but we have thousands of coffee trees, so we don't worry about this. Yeah, so it looks like this was a mature vine that was working out, and now it's been found and brought back to life. This one right here still has its bucket, and the way I usually do this is I'll take a bucket and I'll drop a vanilla orchid vine into it off of a plant using some coconut core in the bucket, and I'll let the vine root. Then I prune it free from the mother vine, walk the pot over, set it up against another plant, in this case tied it to the chirimoya so it doesn't get loose, and it will begin scrambling up the chirimoya as it did here with the coffee, and eventually we'll be able to just remove the bucket. The bucket won't be important, and here's why. Because if you look right here, see all of these are all epiphytic roots, all coming down, all touching soil over here, plus they're all over the tree. And again, this orchid feeds in the air, and it doesn't appear to feed very much. Experiments I've made with fertilizing these orchids when they're in pod have been undesirable. I have blown vanilla orchid beans right off of the plants by fertilizing. So Christopher had asked me a bit about some of the ground covers I was using here, and ground covers in tropical Hawaii are actually a really, really important feature. You don't want to leave ground bare here. It's just not a good idea. It'll wash away on you. So this right over here is perennial peanut. The plant looks so much like the edible peanut, and it does actually produce little nuts underneath the soil that become seed over time. It's flatter growing though. This stuff hardly gets more than an inch off the ground, and so it's an excellent lawn plant in this area. It's a good ground cover plant. It fixes nitrogen. It grows very, very easily from cuttings, and so you can create a lot of it. Over here, another fairly successful ground cover. This is TriStar Day Neutral Everbearing Strawberry, and it's also another one of those surprising crops around here. I had no idea strawberries would grow the way they do in this environment. The biggest problem we have with strawberries here, of course, is something wanting to eat the fruit. So, well, right over here we're going to look at some more ground covers, but you can see what happens with Williams bananas around here. They like to fall over. And so right there is a clump, and most of the stalks before ripening just fall right over here because of the trade winds. They have to be positioned somewhere else. Okay, so right over here again we have ground cover plants. Christopher, you recognize that one, right? Yeah. You bet. Now a lot of gardeners they hate this stuff. Mint can run a buck, but anybody who's ever seen me fall down and get trapped in the hayfield around here, you know what we're competing with. The native vegetation in this area will kill you. I mean, it is so thick and it grows so lush. There are very few things that really compete well with it. And I have found that mint, because it is tolerant of both sun and shade, likes moisture, creeps well, it smells good when you step on it, and it is a useful culinary plant and a medicinal plant. I've started using mint in low spots where there is limited sunlight but lots of moisture, and it's being very successful. Doing really well. This batch here is on the edge of my driveway, so if it starts getting out of control, we'll run over it with a car. So there'll be the pruning control. Right over here, though, higher up this bank, the mint is at the bottom because it likes moisture and shade, but up at the top, needing less moisture and liking more sun, is oregano. And oregano is, again, another plant that seems to produce excellent ground covers in this environment. Lots of surprises. Mediterranean herb, loves Hawaii. So here we are up in my vegetable garden, and Christopher, he's an expert on vegetables. Permaculture there at Merritt, they raise all manner of different vegetables. Here in Hawaii, again, surprises, surprises, surprises. Christopher, looking out there, what catches your attention more than anything else? What do you see?
I like your sweet potatoes and your corn.
Got it.
your sheet mulching and
yep. Well, the way we're doing work here is that the original field looks like that. It's a bunch of Neprolepsis cordifolia mixed with several different grasses. They're impenetrable. They will drag you down. They will kill you. You will die in that pasture if you got out there and try and walk it. Turn blue in the face. It hooks your feet. You cannot step through it. It pulls you down. And so dealing with this is really problematic. I had a guy in here mowing, and he burned the bearings up in the mower trying to cut the stuff. And he didn't want to come back. And it was expensive too. And so what we decided to start doing is I just come in here right like that. You see there's a industrial weed block mat. We put that down over the grass. Sometimes we level the grass by running over it. Ellen gets exercise by stomping the grass sometimes. Otherwise we actually have driven Jeeps over it before to flatten it out or whatever. And then we unroll the weed block over the top. We pin it down well. The weed block that's in here is old weed block being recycled that we keep moving it around the farm as we need it, because pieces that are out there were not long ago right over here. And so this originally started as pasture grass. We killed it with weed block. The weed block was removed. I planted a cover crop of mustard. The mustard was to drive out nematodes. Then the mustard was cut, laid to the ground. We planted sweet corn, and so we had a crop of sweet corn here earlier in the year. That crop of sweet corn was harvested. I came through, I planted soybeans with perennial peanut and annual alfalfa, again, to try to fix nitrogen in the area. We harvested the soybeans. They were a good crop, and now for me, soybeans are going to be the kind of crop I'm going to have to learn how to deal with. I know how to eat an edamame, but I don't really know how to make tofu. And so I got a big bin of soybeans over here waiting for me to figure out how to make tofu out of them. But the point is that we wanted the nitrogen from the roots. I pruned the plants off, leaving the roots to rot in the ground so that the nitrogen fixing bacteria will be released and will enrich the earth here. Now I went through and dumped compost over the top of a lot of this, and right in that area there began to put in some cabbages, some endive, and I had a video recently about planting onions. You can see the little onions standing up. I have more onions and more cabbages that will go into this area. Yeah, so here we are, we're looking at the corn, and under the corn you can see it's just all dead sod. All we did was put down this weed block on that field over there, killed it, and then flip the weed block over under my feet right here, and we put the corn in. The corn takes quite a bit of fertilizer to be able to get it to look like this, so you can't short it. If you short corn on fertilizer anywhere, it's not going to produce, but especially not in Hawaii. This is a Hawaiian variety. This is a hybrid number 10. It's a bicolor sweet corn. It does. Oh yeah, Mr. Anole over there guarding the stalk. The only problem with the anoles is they go to sleep at night, and the biggest pest I got on the corn is a rose beetle chewing the leaves. They seem to like the outside leaves for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, they don't hurt it. It just gets ugly. It doesn't do enough damage. But anyway, corn's a good crop here. It has very few problems whatsoever. Having been a guy born in the Midwest in the midst of cornfields, I can't live without my corn. So here you go. It says, the Hopi told me, if the corn ceases to grow, the world ends. So the corn grows, the world's okay.
You guys ever eat the greens of the sweet potatoes?
I don't myself eat the greens on the sweet potatoes, but yeah, you're right. And in fact, I have a variety on the table and back in the nursery that's local. They call water spinach. And it's an ipomia, or a sweet potato, that likes wet conditions, that they strictly eat the shoots and leaves. This one's edible, although, you know, as it goes with the morning glory family, always beware, because the morning glory family can contain some really strange chemicals. But in the case of sweet potatoes, they're completely edible morning glory. You can see the morning glory flowers there. Yeah, sweet potatoes are another crop around here that's just really, really easy. Just don't let the pigs in.
Looks like it won't stop growing. It's huge. And you're saying you had some problems with the other varieties. That's pretty kind of native.
Yeah, you know, so much around here has to do with what are you raising. You know, it's not just the type of plant, it's the variety of that plant that matters. I grew so many different kinds of squash here, only to watch all of them be destroyed by pickle worms and melon worms. Just ruined it. Never got anything off of it until Hillary up in Hamakua gave me seeds for her local kabocha pumpkin. Now, this is not the same kabocha you all know on the mainland. This is a distinct plant. It's very high quality squash, but it's also apparently resistant to the bugs. Either the stems are too hard to chew through, or they don't like the smell. I don't really understand why, but after they destroyed all my other squash, then I put this one in. As you can see, it's over there in the Roselle. It's over here in my corn. It's up that way. It's heading into the field. It's going to eat the pasture grass alive. This is a very successful plant. It's a little light on the yield end. I'm not that impressed with the amount of squash that comes off of this, but we do get the squash. And here's one right here. That's what a kabocha pumpkin looks like. It's an oddball. Very, very good squash. Unfortunately, this thing is probably way too slow for mainland propagation, unless maybe you live, maybe California, maybe Florida, but that'd be about it. This is a real tropical squash of some sort. And here we go. You know, I tried half a dozen variety of squash I knew from the mainland. Not a single one of them worked here, but got the local seed. Hey, was the trick. Over here we got that tropical legume, the
pigeon pea?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm spacing this morning. Yeah, it's a perennial pea called the pigeon pea. It's a great stick mulch item. It fixes lots of nitrogen. It thrives in this environment, and it produces food. So it's a good one. Here I've planted it in between two blocks of crops. It's wrapped around a bunch of citrus trees that I've got in a row here. Middle of the garden is currently going to citrus trees. Eventually this will become a citrus grove, not a vegetable garden. Christopher noted my Roselle right off. This for me is a brand new crop. I have never raised this before. I have eaten it as Celestial Seasonings Red Zinger tea. I've eaten it as Jamaica in Mexican restaurants. That's about the extent of my exposure. A friend of mine told me that it's good for flushing purines out of the blood. And I do have an excessive amount of uric acid in my blood at times, and so this has been an herbal crop for me. It's also pretty tasty. Those of you who watch the video on the Roselle know that it makes a great cranberry juice type drink. But again, it was a surprise, not having ever grown it. A lot of crops, they just don't work well here, but not this one. It is perfectly adapted. And if you catch it early in the morning, before the sun gets too hard on it, usually, there we go, they snap right off. But later in the day or on the old pods, they don't snap so easy. Over here, this messy bunch of stuff is peppers that are growing mixed with marigolds and also mixed with perennial peanut. The perennial peanut's in there to fix nitrogen. The weeds are there because I didn't get them weeded out. The marigolds are there to prevent nematodes from destroying the pepper plants. Now we get terrible problems with the Chinese fruit fly here destroying my peppers. I had used some spinosad on them to prevent attack by the fly, but then one day I mixed it with oil, and that was a mistake because the oil and the spinosad burned most of the leaves off my poor peppers on me. Some varieties are more resistant than others.
Some of my favorites like bell peppers or Italian peppers, they don't resist too well. Jalapenos a little better. We have a local pepper here called the Hawaiian cocktail pepper that does really well. These guys right over here are the Hawaiian cocktail peppers, and they make this little pumpkin looking cheese pepper fruit. And this thing, for whatever reason, the flies can't seem to lay eggs at the top of this, and so they don't get into this fruit. The fruit seems a little more resistant to nematodes too than some of the other varieties of peppers I grow here. This one's pretty tough, and again, in the local environment, we're back to stuff that's been around the island that most of us aren't familiar with. Seems to thrive here when you start bringing plants in from off the island and put them in here as far as garden vegetables are concerned. A lot of the mainland garden vegetables, they just don't like Hawaii. And then there's jicama that I could just never get to raise in the mainland. But here in Hawaii, jicama is king. I got nice big patches of that stuff. And I found a really cool Japanese multiplier onion called kobo that makes perennial green onions like giant chives. Very neat. Potatoes here on this island are almost impossible, at least at my elevation. Maybe somewhere way up in the mountains they do grow, but down here they get every disease under the sun. It's just impossible. So we do not bother to raise potatoes. Of course, the sweet potato does pretty good, and we have a lot of starchy ones here that replace it in our diet. But what does grow like a potato here is the pineapple. I mean, look at these things. All right, we're at the very end of the season. These are the last few pineapples left out here. We've been picking for months. With pineapples, all you got to do is just take a piece of it and stick it in the ground. Run. Over here, we got a row of pineapples that were put in last year. And they'll be fruiting this coming year, probably about August, probably around August 2018. My guess, we'll be getting pineapple fruit off that. It's surrounded by rows of coffee, cinnamon at the end there. We got bananas growing next to them. Right here's a Kaimana lychee. But out here you're going to see pineapples that were put in this year. And some of this is brand new here. This is all brand new fresh weed block right off the roll. Rolled out over the grass, and then after it started to die back, we planted into it. Right over here we have a large expansive weed mat. Again, was put down over the top of the pasture grass over there. Stuff's slowly dying underneath. Ellen kind of pushed the envelope and went in there with some pineapples. They're getting weedy, grassy. It's going to be a problem. We're going to wait before we do anything else with that until the grass dies down. Basically, the way we do business here with this is we just take a knife, cut a slit, poke a little hole in the dirt, put a little fertilizer in it, and stick a pineapple top in it. Bare root. So it's done. There's a bit of talk on it. You know, it's so much to cover here. Videos can only run so long. I want to thank Christopher for his help on this video, and I also want to thank him for all the connection over the years. You know, I got a chance to talk to his students, and I've met a lot of people because of him. That's been a good relationship. I'm happy to have him and his family visiting us here. Out there on the horizon you can see a few little rain clouds coming in on the trade winds. Christopher and the family are out there somewhere about 15 miles beyond the phone lines here. They went out to the Waipa'i tide pools to enjoy the marine preserve, do a little bit of swimming out there. So he's gone. We'll see him again later on today. I'm learning a lot here. This is 101 gardening all over again for the Green Garden Guy, because so much of what I learned down the mainland, it just doesn't apply here anymore. Which is a cool thing, man. You know, I'm like 66, I'm retired. Here I am going back to school again on one of my favorite subjects. Nothing can be more stimulating. Hey, aloha. Happy gardening. Hang loose, people.